It's my pleasure to introduce in this morning Bert Connell. I knew Bert from my years in Loma. I remember the years, I've spent 2 years there doing a master in public health nutrition. And we kept in touch and we became friends over time. And about, I think there is a tradition here in Romania for people to say that they were first. I won't go that road, but several years ago we joined efforts to start a nutrition program for college level, and he helped write the curricula, everything, and we worked with a college in southern Romania, but somehow the Minister of Health didn't approve to start that program. But that training was helpful, and when they established here the program at the university, Bert had an input from the beginning, and then he came as a professor and taught, and there is a collaboration which I think will go on. He is the chair of the Nutrition and Dietetics at the Loma University. And Bert, we are honored to have you here.
Thank you very much. It's good to be home again. I've actually been in Romania longer than I have been in my home. There's a story there that we won't go into anyway, but I do feel like this is home, and it is good to be back and to see faces of students and colleagues that I have worked with last summer and during the winter here. So what I'd like to do this morning is to talk just a little bit about history. To be honest with you, I hated history when I was in college. But somehow, through maturity or something, I began to really enjoy history. And one of the areas of history that I enjoy particularly is the history of our profession. And so I'd like to share with you just a little bit about that. But to begin with, I would like to tell you something that's kind of the premise behind what is behind my message this morning. And that is, I've had the opportunity not only to work here in Romania, but also to work in several countries in Africa. And one of the things that really impressed me was that I could go to Kenya, I could take out my cell phone, and I could talk with my wife. I could be out in the safari land where lions are just next to me, and I'm talking to my wife. Technology has been so important, and the changes in technology have been so important in our lives. And so what has happened in Africa is that they have completely bypassed a whole level of technology. And as a result, they are up to date with what we are doing here in Western civilization. And so this is what I'm hoping that what can happen here in Romania, is in the development and maturity of a program that we can bypass some of the issues that we had in our history and go right to cutting edge technology. And I think that that can happen. Now, one of the things that I think we need to look at is what are some of the foundations of the development of nutrition and dietetics. And one of the things that we see is that it centers around war. In the Crimean War, Florence Nightingale, an individual that I think that you're familiar with, the mother of nursing, but was also influential in the development of nutrition and dietetics. And so in the Crimean War, she was there working in kitchens, providing food for individuals who had been injured, and as a result of the better nutrition, we saw a significant reduction in the amount of death as a result of the war. Now, there was another individual that I think that we need to look at for just a moment, and this is Sarah Tyson Rohrer. In the 1870s, 1880s, there was a movement that came from France to the United States in which the cooking school was a major factor in society during the time. Anyone who was a society lady was involved in cooking. And so Sarah Tyson Rohrer was one of the leaders of the cooking school movement in Philadelphia. Boston, New York, and Philadelphia were the centers of this movement. And so her graduates then some of them were involved in evaluating hospital care, looking particularly at sanitation and evaluating the degree to which the facilities were meeting standards associated with that. An interesting story about Sarah Rohrer was that she felt that a refined lady could cook. In France and other places, men were the cooks. But she said that women can cook as well. And she would have cooking demonstrations in her silk gown so that she could show that she would not get tomato and other things on her gown. And she was very successful. But she is referred to as the first dietitian because part of what she did in her cooking school was to teach individuals to be involved in diet cooking, modifying foods for physicians and their patients. And so it is on this basis that we look at her as being the first dietitian. Now, the effect of the Great War, World War I, on the development of the profession of dietetics is something that I think that we need to look at. It created a need for dietitians. In the Second World War, as well as in the First World War, one of the issues of the soldiers was that they found that many of them were malnourished. And so there was a great deal of effort put forth to increase the nutritional value of the food that was provided to soldiers. And so the Red Cross was commissioned then to provide this increased level of nutrition. And so many dietitians then joined the Red Cross to provide this higher level of care for the soldiers. And so there was also a similar effort amongst the civilian individuals in the United States to improve the nutrition of the nation as a whole through research, through education, but primarily to conserve the food that was there. Let's make the best use of the food that we have so that we're not wasting food. I think that is a good policy in today's environment as well. The Great War also had an impact in the formation of the American Dietetic Association. Dietitians were primarily associated with the Home Economics Association, and they met on an annual basis. But in October 17, they did not meet because of the effect of the war. But Linda Francis Cooper, who was a supervising dietitian at Battle Creek Sanitarium, and Lulu Graves of Lakeside Hospital in Cleveland decided that they would get together with some of their friends to talk about how they could help in this government's effort to conserve food. So these two individuals with 97 of their closest friends, so a total of 99 individuals then met in that October weekend to form, as a result of their discussion, the American Dietetic Association. Now, one of the issues that was immediately forced upon them was a decision as to what were the qualifications of individuals who would be members of the American Dietetic Association. And then associated with this were what were the educational requirements. So by looking at the membership categories and qualifications, we're really addressing the educational requirements. And so there were 4 primary sections that were identified in the early bylaws of the association. Number 1 were home economic graduates of 2-year programs, or home economics graduates from a 1-year program who had had 1 year of additional practice in dietetics, or individuals who were involved in nutrition research. If you look at the history of nutrition and nutrition research, this was a very important time where many of the basic minerals and their role in metabolism, as well as vitamins, were identified. But that occurred through the early part of the 20th century. And then the fourth area were physicians in good standing who were currently practicing were also eligible to become a member of the American Dietetic Association. The early dietetic educational standards were really identified in the second meeting of the American Dietetic Association in 1919. They identified at that point the fact that there needed to be at least 2 years of training, and they needed training in the social services. Today we would call this public health. They also identified a need for directors of hospital dietary, the administrative dietitian. And there was a need to identify the difference between an individual who was a college graduate and a dietitian who had only maybe 2 years of training. So we have nurses who have an associate's degree, and we have nurses that have a bachelor's degree. They have differences in the responsibility, and that was similar to what was happening at that time. But the opposing side of this whole organization was saying 1 year of education is enough. 1 year of education and training, that's all we need. Well, I think that there was a sense of reason there, and it was the longer educational efforts that were identified. And at the fourth meeting of the association, this would be about 1921, there was a proposal for a 4-year curriculum in dietetics based upon a liberal education, written and spoken English, an advanced course in comparative literature, Latin at the high school level. How many of you have those courses? Very good. I'm deficient. Foreign language, 1 year of history, art, economics, psychology, sociology, education, chemistry, physics, biology. A very well-rounded individual was the individual that became a dietitian. And I'd like to see that this is the standard that we use today in terms of who would come into the profession. But remember Lena Francis Cooper, one of the founders who called this meeting together in 1917. She indicated very strongly that the training of the dietitian had 2 sections, 2 intertwined parts. One being dietetics education, the didactic part, yes, and then the practice, hospital training as an apprentice. And she maintained that neither was complete without the other. It had to all fit together. So eventually, within just a few years, the 4-year curriculum that we identified became the standard of education of the dietitian, along with the dietetic internship. And so the dietetic internship through the years has been the standard of this apprenticeship. In 1931, there was a modification of this curriculum in which the coursework in institutional management was required. And that then fit the individual to really be more effective in the directorship of hospital dietary departments. 9 years later, in 1940, a series of standards was established and begun, and it was referred to as Outline 1. Outline 1 provided for specialization in practice. So it still was based upon this 4-year curriculum, but provided then for the opportunities of specialization in administration, in hospital and food clinics. And so this would be the dietitian involved in medical nutrition therapy for one area anyway, and in public nutrition, our public health nutritionist. And this curriculum was required by 1944. So this gave 4 years for the educational programs to add and to develop their curriculum meeting these standards. 12 years later, in 1952, Outline 2 was introduced. And it provided for 4 areas of knowledge, but with no areas of real specialization in practice. I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but I went through Plan 3. Began in 1956. In 1956, I was in grade school. I was in 6th grade in 1956. But it was still in place by the time I entered college. And one of the things that you can see as these plans are identified is that it gave greater autonomy to the programs to, yes, meet the standards, but meet them in a different way, a way that was appropriate for them. And so the Plan 3 provided for an area of emphasis, either general dietetics, administrative dietetics, or nutrition. And as a college graduate, I was involved in the general dietetics program, in which I was able to go either into clinical nutrition or into administration or into public health. And then by the time I graduated and began being involved in education, Plan 4 had come around. And this too gave greater opportunities for individualization in dietetics education. But Plan 4 really provided for the meeting of competencies that had been developed from a role delineation. And I believe that Jesse talked a little bit about role delineation yesterday, in which we identified what dietitians are doing, and then stepping back from that and say, if they're doing this, what do they need to know in order to perform this effectively? So this role delineation today is repeated at about every 5 years, and so we see a development of new standards. And so the newest standards are, I think, going to be discussed later this morning, and it's part of this presentation. But one of the fundamental factors that helped in the development of dietetics education was the Mures report, a 1972 study commission that was commissioned by the Association and funded by the W.K. Kellogg Foundation. And their recommendations fundamentally were that there needed to be a curriculum based upon competencies, and that the programs of choice in nutrition education was a coordinated program. And this is a point at which the supervised practice or the internship was coordinated and integrated into the didactic learning. More about that in the next presentation. But the curriculum that was identified as important by the Mures report indicated that there would be two-year educational periods. The first 2 years are prerequisites, in which we are looking at chemistry and biology, foods and nutrition, psychology, cultural anthropology. So these are prerequisites then to getting into the second 2-year framework, in which we would see the addition of biochemistry, chemistry of natural products, biology, social and behavioral sciences, and foods and nutrition. But in the area of foods and nutrition, there was even greater opportunities for in-depth knowledge, such as child development and health, food economics, food science, dietary patterns of eating particularly, experimental foods, food service management, and human nutrition and disease. And so having seen these various curriculums as they developed, I thought that I would just compare briefly what did my program do in response to all of these changes. Now, the institution that I represent is relatively new. It began in 1905. There are institutions in Europe that go back many, many centuries. We're very, very young. But the first program that began at Loma was, or in the College of Medical Evangelists, as it was called at that point. First program was nursing, and the second one was nutrition. And the program was a hygienic cooking and baking course, and it was referred to as a dietetics course. And the curriculum included such things as physiology, chemistry, foods and nutrition, hospital cooking and baking, and involvement in community-based programs. So they had public health, they had the culinary aspect, and they had nutrition aspect. But because of World War I, the Great War, this program stopped in about 1918. And it was begun then again in 1922 and was referred to as a dietetics training course. It was a 2-year course, and that was, if you remember what we were saying, that was the standard at that time. But in 1924, they modified the program just a little bit and enabled students, because of the economic conditions at that time, to do this 2-year program in 3 years, so that they would work a semester, go to school a semester, work a semester, and go to school again for the next semester. So in 1930, we added a 4-year collegiate curriculum, and the completion of this program led to a Bachelor of Science degree. So we began a dietetic internship, and these dietetics programs that I've discussed had a supervised professional practice or internship component, but a formal dietetic internship was begun in 1954 and concluded in 1974 as a result of the implementation of the coordinated program that began in 1972. And I was one of the original faculty members in that coordinated program in September of 1972. And so 2 weeks ago, we graduated our 38th class from our coordinated program. One thing that I would like to say to Dr. Dan and to others is that, yes, I am chair of nutrition and dietetics, but that comes to a conclusion on Friday of this week. And so I'm stepping down, and a new chair has been appointed, and I look forward to working with her, and I think we have better days ahead. We have added a master's degree program, we have a doctoral program now, and so that is, I think, indication that we are working, and I hope that we can see the same thing happening here in Romania. And so as I've thought about what are the implications for dietetics education here in Romania, number one is that I hope that you learn from our mistakes so that you can go directly to cutting-edge technology and dietetics education. So take what you can learn, apply it, and eliminate that which is of no value to you. But be as efficient as you are able to. You have an outstanding foundation. And so my final recommendation is to work together, not only within your association, but within the associations here in Europe, and we're here to help you as well. And I would like to see you build your profession, and success to you as you do that. Thank you so much for your time this morning. I look forward to observing what's happening in the time to come. Thank you.